Hey up guys, what's going on and welcome back to the Counties Experiment, where I've turned the top two divisions of the English football structure into a county-based league system. I'll start with a bit of news that after nearly 15 years in charge of now Lancashire, Sean Dyche was finally prized away from that particular club. Normally, the reason he leaves is because he becomes England manager. Not this time. Sean Dyche is manager of Real Madrid. Sean Dyche is manager of Yusuf Demir, who they've acquired. Looking at the landmarks, they've also won La Liga 3 years in a row under Sean Dyche. He's also managing Moukoko. That's it, the experiment's over. I've broken the game. What isn't broken, though, is the consistency of the top two teams in England to win every damn title. London not had a sniff in these 10 years, despite being the combined forces of Chelsea, Arsenal and Tottenham, with a sprinkling of others. Yeah, it does seem to be dominated by two, although I do notice this particular season, 71 points for 3 teams and Hampshire on 70. Hampshire on 70 is probably partially due to the fact that their manager is now Allegri. It's not the weirdest manager appointment in this division. Obviously, all of those are now being trumped by Sean Dyche at Real Madrid, but I did notice a few odd ones as I was having a quick poke around. For headlines, Troy Deeney is manager of Norfolk. Troy Deeney is also a bizarrely good manager, formerly managed Lincolnshire in the save as well. It's weird to think of Troy Deeney as a manager. In terms of other major news in the Premier Division, South Yorkshire are still managed by Chris Wilder, 10 years in. They also have a potential centre-back pairing of Gomez and Gomez. One a Spanish new gen who has a fantastic moustache, and the other being actual Joe Gomez. Although, of course, they do play 3 at the back under Chris Wilder, so there's a Gomez sandwich waiting to happen there. The fantastically named Brian plays for West Yorkshire, which would be a fantastically Yorkshire thing to be if he wasn't Spanish. But I can't help but love the fact that a Yorkshire team has a player called Brian. Speaking of West Yorkshire, who, of course, I gave Erling Haaland to originally, now replaced by Brian. He's still at Merseyside, so the fact they sold him to Merseyside isn't that tragic anymore, considering the fact that Haaland has played out the rest of his career at Merseyside now, seemingly. In terms of the other Dortmund players, which I kind of forgot to check in on the 5-year one, West Midlands still have Jude Bellingham. He's not the best Jude Bellingham I've ever seen, but they also still have Ruben Neves 10 years in, which is possibly even more surprising. If I go to Tyne and Wear, you'll notice they don't have Giovanni Reina, the third of the 3. Born in Sunderland, Giovanni Reina. I gave to Tyne and Wear originally. Yes, he's been sold for 40 million, I think, to Manchester. I've just noticed that they've got a wonder kid Cypriot, which, as a fan of Cyprus football in general, and Paphos in particular, is incredible to me. They have a Cypriot player on 120 grand a week. He is a central defender who isn't even that good. Mentally, great. Physically, technically, even more. Even weirder is he actually genned in Cyprus. Speaking of Cyprus, I do have a database for Cyprus for this year. I will be doing the Cyprus experiment after this, once I work out how to do the financing for it better than I did last time. They've also filled in the American gap with Lewis Wheel, who I think, actually looking at the timeframes, was here alongside Giovanni Reina, so they did have two US players playing alongside each other. Tyne and Wear becoming the de facto side in Europe that Americans probably were paying attention to during that time. I have just noticed the team that he was signed from. People who paid attention to this year's deadline day may recall that Newcastle signed a player from Santos Laguna. It's happened in the game. That's weird. He's also bloody ridiculous. If the player that we've signed from Santos Laguna in real life ends up anywhere near as good as this, we'll be laughing. I'll quickly show you the squads for the top 3 teams in particular. Klopp's still manager of Merseyside, by the way, 10 years in. What does that actually take his tenure to? Klopp's apparently been at Merseyside for nearly 15 years. He's about to overtake Sean Dyche's reign at Lancashire, Burnley. Merseyside squad, Haaland still there. Kunde, who they had in the 5-year one, still there. Trent, the only one I think still there other than Alisson at 37. They have signed the other Luis Suarez, which is confusing, but I like. That's good. I appreciate the circularity of that. Obviously, we're getting to the point where there's quite a few new gens in this particular save now. 10 years in, very few players still around. Obviously, just the youngsters of our current generation, like Ansu Fati at Manchester, who we'll look at next. Pochettino managing. Diaz still there, actually, 10 years in. Nicole Weir, who I'm pretty certain was at Hertfordshire. He was the top goal scorer for the season they won the Conference League. Yeah, he's got great. English, model citizen. Oh, England still haven't won anything, by the way. They keep being beaten by the same 3 sides. The tournament after the last one you saw, they were beaten by Italy. Then they were beaten by Belgium again, who beat them in the first one. Then they were beaten by Holland again, who beat them in the second one. So the World Cup's about to happen. I'm fully expecting them to be beaten by Italy again, just to complete this rotation. Phil Foden's still there 10 years in. Lamptey, pretty certain they signed. There's Reina. Nuno Mendes. Did he go via a different club? pretty certain he went to Merseyside originally. Saka they've acquired from Dortmund. And Marcus Rashford there, 10 years. Sorry, Aaron Hickey's there. What? Why? They paid £26 million for his services. His services. Don't get me wrong, he's not a bad player, but he's not top 2 teams in England good. And also Ederson's still there after 10 years as well. The combined London team has a 36-year-old Harry Kane. Reece James still there. Mason Mount still there. Hudson-Odoi still there. Sancho was there last time we looked, as was Ramsdale. And Valverde. So London's retention to players is seemingly quite high. Pretty certain Maxence Cacré was there last time. I didn't call him out, I don't think, but I did notice he was there. Bunch of new gens as well. Lukaku is there at 37. I mean, they're doing my job for me. Obviously, in an FN22 version of this simulation, he would be part of this squad anyway. Now at Chelsea, they have a Dan Henderson, not to be confused with Dean Henderson. Blimey, that's got to get confusing. Is he any good? Is he competing with Dean Henderson at all? Yep, probably. That's weird. Anyway, to go to the county's championship, North Yorkshire have dominated this particular season. Dorset and Northamptonshire being re-promoted. It's the same teams at the top end. Bristol down in 7th is quite disappointing. County Durham have remained seemingly a top... I don't know if they've remained a top-half team or if they've just been in the top half the 2 times we've looked at them. They've consistently overperformed. John McGreal managing them now. What happened to Robbie Fowler? I don't know. Sacked in literally the next season. Where is he in this world? He's manager of Burton in fairness, he's actually not that good a manager. That's probably the level of football he should have been at. But obviously, particularly with the championship sides, none of the players I gave them 10 years ago are going to be still at the side they were at. I think Gio Bellingham might be the only player still at the side I gave them to 10 years ago. Obviously, a lot of them are retired by now. Worcester, last time we looked, were managed by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Joe Garner managing them now. Where's Ollie gone? Because I don't think he's in a Premier League team. Oh, he's manager of Northumberland. He was Worcestershire manager for 4 years. He actually didn't have a job between Manchester United and Worcestershire. After he was sacked by Manchester United in game, I forgot to remove him. So he is now manager of the worst side in the county's championship, pretty much, which is Northumberland. Actually, no, they've been relatively mid-table since last time we've looked. They just had one bad season most recently, which is probably why they've got a new manager. Well, they've just swapped managers. Northumberland sacked Joe Garner, hired Solskjaer, and Worcestershire signed Joe Garner. What is the point of that? So maybe keep an eye on Northumberland in future seasons, because they were doing all right previously. Herefordshire dead last in the most recent season. Yeah, they've not done well. Apologies to people from Herefordshire, of which I know at least one. Warwickshire doing all right, though. They're formerly Leventon Spa. Top half finish for them is quite good going. Whether or not that's just an anomaly, I don't know. It is an anomaly. They have been 20th or worst pretty much every season since we started. No manager changes this particular season. Local businessman took over a while ago. What I was kind of secretly hoping for is one of these bottom end sides in the championship to have a tycoon takeover. It's not happened yet. One of the things, of course, in moving these Vanarama teams up that I completely forgot to acknowledge was the fact that some of them won't have stadiums that were good enough for this level straight away. Because you need to have a 5,000 seat stadium straight away. Apparently, it took 2 years for that to happen. And stadiums isn't something I've looked at yet. I've just realised in general. Any of these guys made new ones? Dorset Stadium is a new one, I would presume. As is the Warwick Stadium for Warwick, actually. Although they've called it Warwick Stadium. Is it even in Warwick? It's in Leamington Spa. Of course it is. I must remember to make the short names the same as the actual county in future ones as well, because that can't happen. That can't happen in the future. Whether any of these other ones have been named after people, Northampton Stadium's a new one, obviously, as well. Anyone in the top division got new stadiums? No. I was intrigued to see if any of them had downgraded in League One. But yes, I do need to nerf some of these. George Ramsey Arena. Is that something that's happening in real life? Or is that an in-game thing? Possibly an in-game thing. He is a legend in the game, so that might be a in-game renamed stadium situation. Ryan Giggs is their manager. Wayne Rooney's in charge of Man United, by the way. He went via Everton. History repeats itself. But yeah, the weird thing is, he was at Derbyshire, of course, then Hertfordshire, a top division side. He then went to a third-tier side in Everton. I don't know why this happens. I don't know why these top-end teams are still pulling good managers. They can't afford the wages. You just saw he was on $7.5 grand there. It's not like they're getting massive wages still. Because they can't be promoted, they literally cannot overtake anyone in the championship in terms of reputation levels. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why this keeps happening. Actually, I just realised there's an issue in the database where when I load it in, I am stuck at only having the top 4 divisions. I can't have less than 4 divisions, and I can't have more than 4 divisions when I load the game in. I don't know why that is. Anyone who's good with the editor, let me know. I realize there is one way to see if teams have been relegated more than once, and it's via this. I think the answer is no. Bournemouth would have made it to League Two, which is quite impressive. But yeah, anyone that was punted down would still have a relatively good reputation. So yeah, seemingly there's not been major drops. Crystal Palace in League Two is the worst of things in 10 years' time. There were two last time we looked at Brentford and Fulham, I think they were. Had been relegated again, but they are back in League One. But we'll have a nosy at the Champions League now. Let's go around to the international dealings. A non-English final in the most recent season, but I can see Manchester have won 2, PSG 2 before that. Kind of Noah's arcing its way a little bit at the moment. They could have won 3 in a row, actually. What I will be interested to see is if those teams that aren't Merseyside or Manchester, if they're progressing more often than they were before. Particularly poor year for English sides all round, actually, this most recent season. An all-English final the season before, though. West Yorkshire in the first knockout round, as were London. So all 4 did get to the knockout round that time. Tyne Weir got through. Mersey beaten in the knockout round as well. Hampshire got through. Manchester went through to the final. I'm just looking for someone that isn't London, Merseyside or Manchester in the quarterfinals. Seemingly not. London get to the quarterfinals, that's about as far as they go every single year. It's only really Merseyside and Manchester that consistently still get to semi-finals and beyond. That's a little irritating and quite weird. In terms of the Europa League, no English winners in the past 5 seasons. Bayern Munich, Sevilla, Juventus, Monaco and Leipzig beating Barcelona. That's a big hitter in that final. That's an odd 3rd place finish, presumably, in the Champions League for them, I imagine. I do notice London there. So what's happening to English sides here? London, West Midlands, they fought each other. Lancashire, okay, so there were 2 English sides in the semi-finals. None in the quarterfinals the year before. 1 in the second knockout round. 2 in the second knockout round. West Yorkshire got to the final the year before with Lancashire the round before that. Poor year the year before again. 2 knockouts in the second knockout round. 1 got to the quarterfinals in Hertfordshire. 2 semi-finalists the year before, and I think that's the last one we saw, yeah. So it seems to weirdly alternate in the Europa League between good seasons and bad seasons. Meanwhile, in the Europa Conference League, no further victories again. I'm not going to go into detail on that one any more than that, but odd that it's not happening. I'm actually intrigued to see where the English leagues are in the overall league structure of Europe now. FA Cup's still the most reputable cup, though, and Merseyside, Manchester, London, so the presumed top 3 have won 3 of the last 5, but Tyne Weir again and West Midlands interrupting that. Carabao Cup was a little bit more dominant between the top sides, and still is actually. Lancashire nicking 1 of the last 5. Papa John's Trophy. Are we getting any more under-23s teams in the knockout rounds of this? No appears to be the answer. 3 got through that year. That's it. Only 4 under-23s teams have progressed to the quarterfinals of the Papa John's Trophy in the last 5 years, and 3 of them did it in the same year. It's a bit of an interesting trophy, this now, Papa John's. So despite the seemingly downgrade in English teams' performances in Europe, the English Counties Premier Division does remain the top division. I think the fact that they had a treble of Merseyside winners at the beginning of it, and then a double of Manchester recently in the Champions League, is possibly what's keeping them at the top, because they're not doing particularly well in the other 2 competitions. And in fact, Club World Championship will have had a couple since we last saw things. Merseyside won the one that's ingrained in the 21-22. London actually won the 22 one. They can't do the Champions League, but they can do that. And Manchester, the one before last. I'm intrigued to know who's in the group stages for these, because there's 8 groups, right? Because when I did the Club World Championship as Tenerife, there were 4 English sides involved. This time, there's 2 Italian teams, 2 Spanish teams, and 2 German teams. No PSG at all. There appears to be more even spread of European teams in the Club World Championship as a result of this alteration. One last thing I do want to show you in this 5-year version is... Sorry, Ollie Watkins is playing for Arsenal. I mean, how old is he? 34. Okay, so... Yeah, this is a 34... This is a 34-year-old striker going to Tier 3 at the end of his career. That makes sense. What's his wage, out of curiosity? 20 grand a week? Yeah, so in future versions of this, we are definitely... Frank's in charge. Of course he is. Wait, Frank's in charge of Arsenal. But yeah, looking at the wages, they do have silly wages for League One. Because the problem is, financially, they're still well in the black. They're still earning a ridiculous amount of money through gate receipts, at the very least. I don't know what their sponsorship's like, and I don't know there's a way to look at it without taking them over. Actually, that's a good point. Can I have a look in the editor? No. Yeah, seemingly these teams at the top, like Arsenal and Chelsea, I would presume, are in a similar boat. Yeah, they've got players on 20 grand, 30 grand. The teams at the bottom of the Championship are paying players a few £1,000s a week, so they have picked things up from their Vanarama levels formally. I'm sorry, I just need to click on one player. This might genuinely be the best new gen name of all time. Thank God Eza. I would love to think it's pronounced Thank God Easy, but in my heart of hearts, no, it isn't. Imagine being a supporter of a club with a player called Thank God. I mean, the headlines write themselves. And it's genuinely his name as well. I clicked on that in the full expectation he's going to have a different name in here, but no. They also have a player just called Pau. That's it. He's English as well. I'm fully expecting a Spanish secondality. His name is Shane Manning. Has no second nationalities at all, or eligibilities, but for some reason, he's known as Pau. I mean, this has broken my brain. The one thing I did want to check whilst I was here, though, is transfers. Because they're buying players for small money. But what I wanted to see was outbound teams, because they've still got their academies. They're still going to get the same kind of... Well, they're still going to be getting players in and developing them relatively well. I don't know how moving them down reputation-wise has affected the youth intake spread in terms of teams. Whether or not all the London-based ones are primarily going to London, or if they're going to adjoining counties a little bit more, like Hertfordshire, for instance, like Kent and Essex, Suffolk even. Like, I don't know how well they're poaching off perhaps former players that would have gone here, or players that would have formerly gone here. Like, I don't know how those adjoining counties are doing in terms of acquiring youth intake players that would have gone to teams like Chelsea. But I noticed they're selling players for 15 million here. Adrian Lawrence has gone to Suffolk. He's not even that great. He's a good left back, actually, and left backs are hard to come by, so premium. But yeah, seemingly every year they're selling a player. Minu Diallo there. And I'm presuming these are all academy prospects. Yeah, they are. Came through at Chelsea. The year before, they sold a player for 15. Terry Grant came through at Chelsea. The year before, one player being sold for 16 grand. Like, every year they appear to have at least one player that's sold for decent money. In fact, I've just noticed in the 24-25 season, they were the team that gave Hertfordshire Nicole Weir, who we've seen is the best player in English football. Model citizen striker, the player that won effectively Hearts of the Europa Conference League, now at Manchester. So presumably, teams like Chelsea, Arsenal and Manchester United are now... I mean, Manchester United were 11th, but I would presume them to be in a very similar boat transfer history-wise. Yeah, they're 100% a selling club. This is part of the reason why they have ridiculous budgets right now. Is because they are selling players for massive amounts of money, but they can't spend it. Yeah, I mean, they sold this guy to East Riding for 15 million. Is he worth 15 million? He's valued more than that, but I don't know. Oh, one bizarre success story of this 10-year save. Tony Paddock's still in charge of East Riding. I don't know how, but he is. I don't understand how he's still in charge of a top division club with those attributes. But 10 years in, Tony Paddock's still in charge. Took over the end of the first season, still in charge. I don't understand it. Like, Chris Wilder I understand because they've not had a poor season in 10 years. Klopp I understand because they've been... Well, this is the first time I think they've finished any worse than second in 10 years. I just realised I haven't shown you every season previously. London were 5th, which is why they're in the Europa League that year. But it's been Mersey and Manchester every single year. Still, like, that's where we left things off, with London 15 points behind, 20 points behind the year after that. London was 7th the year after that, Tyne Weir and Hamps. They all got through to the round of 16 that particular season. But one thing I did notice, and didn't comment on the time, is that Tyne Weir's wages are ridiculously high for a team that was formerly Newcastle. But I think it's going to be the case for pretty much all of these teams. Like, if we look at their wage structures, Southampton's wage structure in real life is bizarre. But actually, that's relatively alright for Hampshire, but they have only had sort of one season popping in there. I think they've popped in a couple of times recently, but they had that one season in 4th, and then they had a poor season afterwards. And similarly, the year after that again. Whereas Tyne and Weir have been up there more often. Same with West Yorkshire, they've been up there more often. So their wages are similarly quite high overall. Wesley is still there 10 years in. Brian, Calvin Phillips still there 10 years in as well. Shackleton's still there 10 years in. They acquired Theo Hernandez recently. They've got an Argentinian wonder kid. Yeah, he's good. Just can't. Brian. How is Calvin Phillips not in captain or vice captain role? West Midlands similarly up there quite a lot. And of course, Leicestershire in real life are contesting that quite often. And actually, they don't get into this top 4 anywhere near as often as you would think they would have. The original Leicestershire was just Leicester, basically. They didn't have any additions. They didn't have any losses either of any particular note. So it was just Leicester, but but in a Premier League that didn't have Man United, Tottenham, Chelsea, Arsenal. So theoretically, they should have been the fourth best team in that first season. And yet, very rarely do they get in the top four. They've done it twice in 10 years. And in fact, quite often they don't even get European football. I know Leicester are genuinely underperform in the game for whatever reason. I don't know why. Particularly weird now they're actually a Football Manager affiliate, that they are completely underrated in the game. And Brendan Rodgers as well, as a manager, is underrated in the game. Still. But it's weird that's carrying over here when there's actually less teams to contest with. What I'm really hoping for at some point is one of the teams in the Championship to get a tycoon takeover and just go straight up. Because I want to see a shake-up. I still want to see a big shake-up. It's nice that these teams in the Champions League are rotating more often now, apart from those top three, pretty much most years. It's nice that there's a rotation in the European spots. I just want to see someone from nowhere become an established Champions League side. Still, it's not happened in 10 years. Maybe that's something for 25. I don't know whether I'm going to do 20 or 25 next. It depends, because I don't know how many more years, I don't know how many more parts of this I want to do. It depends on how much you want to see. Because normally with these things, I go 1, 5, 10, 25. I might just do 20 to leave the door open for 30 and 50, perhaps. I don't know. I don't really know how far I want to take this particular experiment, because I think I'm genuinely fascinated by some of the subplots here, even if there's not been a drastic overhaul with a certain team coming from nowhere. Despite that narrative not appearing yet, I think there's some interesting subplots going on. Obviously, in the next one, no matter what happens, we're out of real players. So looking at squads and things is not going to be a part of it. But managers is still certainly a thing, and stadiums is still certainly a thing, of course. So still plenty to look for in future parts. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe. Help that algorithm. Until next time. Ta-ra.